In this chapter, we're going to learn about health, lifestyle, and stress. Now, you might be wondering, why did we jump from chapter 2 to 14? Well, I thought it'd be more important to upload this early in the course rather than late. And also, chapter 3 is a very big chapter, and it needs more than, if you're in a face-to-face class, it needs more than 2 lectures. Versus this one, we can definitely get done in a lecture and a half, maybe in a lecture. So that's some of the reasons why I loaded the order a little bit funky, as you've probably noticed. There's also some interesting techniques for helping to control stress in this chapter. So I hope if you're an online student that you just don't maybe just merely listen to them, but you actually give them a try. You might find some of these techniques, if you're faithful about them, be very useful. And can't we all need a little stress reduction, especially in these times? So take care, and I hope you find this chapter to be interesting and somewhat useful. Biological, psychological, and social factors all impact health. Take a moment and think, which model do you think we use? If you want to guess psychological, well, great guess, this is a psychology class, but no, that is not the answer. You're thinking perhaps biological. Also a reasonable guess, but no. Then you think it must be social factors. Well, again, no. It is the biopsychosocial model of health. Maybe a trick question, but really not. Additionally, you can arrange those words in any order, but biopsychosocial seems to flow off the tongue just a little bit easier. A related question, well, is there a psychological approach devoted to enhancing health? Go to the video clip attachment and listen, and your answer will be there. I assume from the previous slide, you concluded that stress will be our next topic. Indeed, you're correct. Let's start with the basics, stressors versus stress. And as you can see, we'll start with stressors. These are threats to our peaceful existence. Really anything that can threaten to rock your boat. Stressors include both daily hassles, which are everyday irritations, and major life events. And maybe you're surprised to learn that even very good major life events are significant stressors. If this was a live class, I'd ask every student to share a daily hassle they've had today, or at least in the last week. It's not hard to think of many. So perhaps take a moment and think of what daily hassles you've had already today. Daily hassles might be everything from not being able to find your keys, to finding a stain on your shirt, to finding that your milk is spoiled, to just hitting every red light as you go to school, and many more. Now, as I mentioned, major life events could be good or bad and still be stressful. Let's take a moment and think of positive life events that are major life events that are indeed highly stressful. Take a moment and see as many as you can come up with. The list is endless. Going to college, graduating from college, getting your first job, getting married, having a baby, getting promoted, retiring, and so many more. So we consider stressors, the threats to our peaceful existence. Now let's consider stress. Stress refers to our psychological and physiological reactions to those threatening events. The physiological effects include our fight or flight system, which includes the major stress gland and 2 of its major hormones. Stress also can affect the brain's glands, which control this gland. And also in the previous chapter, that is chapter 3, we learned the branch of the nervous system that's involved in the stress. Since we're getting very, very close to the test, and I assume that you've been studying regularly, hopefully you'll be able to fill in all these blanks. Take a moment and see what you can do. So we learned in chapter 3 that the adrenal gland is the major gland related to the stress response, and its hormones include adrenaline and cortisol. What glands in the brain involve controlling the adrenal gland and all the other glands? Well, we know that the hypothalamus controls the pituitary, and the pituitary controls all the other glands. So, hypothalamus and pituitary. And which is the stress branch of the nervous system? Remember, we had a mnemonic. We said it would only work, though, if you're a nice person. If you're a nice person, you see somebody all stressed out or having an emergency, you should feel great sympathy. So that would be our mnemonic. So it would be the sympathetic branch of the nervous system. Most people believe we live at highly stressful times. I'm rather dubious. Let's consider people of the past that live locally. We're very close to the stockade. So let's consider how people lived in the stockade and their stressors, and are our lives really that much more stressful? Let's consider the temperature of your home in the winter. 60 to 75, I assume. Well, people who live in the stockade, during the day their house would get to a balmy, if they were lucky in winter, mid-40s. At night it would go below freezing. The water they had, of course, would freeze solid. Are you cold 24/7 in the winter? People back then were cold all the time. Do you have running water in your home? Of course. Hot water? Of course. Back in colonial times, you might have to go to the well and break the ice. You might have to go down to the river. So running water in a home would be an unimaginable luxury to these people. Do you have clean clothes? They would not. Are you always hungry? Well, if you are, please visit our food pantry. You can go there up to 3 times a month. Please remember to bring your bags, and we'll also give you resources for other local food pantries too. What time do you go to bed? 9:45, 10, 11, 11:30? Well, colonial times, people would go to bed at dusk because there was no light in the homes. They could not afford oil. They could not afford candles. Candles were made from tallow, fat. And if you're on the verge of the starvation, you can't take the fat, which could have been calories, and use it in terms of a candle. So people went to bed at dusk. They moved the furniture to the center of the room, and you put your gun or your rifle into place, easy to access place. If you had a second floor, you knew how many steps were up and down in the stairway because you could not see. Right now, as I narrate this, we're in the middle of the COVID epidemic. Hopefully you don't know anybody that died from it. And if you did, I'm very sorry, and I do extend my sympathy to you. In colonial times, you would know somebody that died every spring. It might be 2 houses down, 10 houses down, maybe in your house, but even young people were regularly dying, which is a rarity in our current times. So are our modern lives truly that stressful compared to people of the past? I do not think so. Let's now consider some of our stress-related responses, starting with problem-focused coping. This would be coping with direct steps to confront the stressor. One gender is more likely to use it. Do you think men or women? Of course, everybody uses it, but men use it more often. It's their go-to strategy. Now, a different response, which we all use, is called the tend and befriend response. This is a tendency more often seen in, you think, men or women? Indeed, women to react to stressors by focusing on social ties, stopping at somebody's house, texting, phone calling, asking for a hug. Now let's go to our next related slide. Let's think of 2 examples. A man and a woman are chatting. In one example, the man has an issue, and the other example, a woman has an issue. What problems can we predict based on the previous slide? Take a moment and see if you can identify, again, based on the previous slide. So the man is much more likely, when discussing his problem with a woman, to expect problem-focused coping. And yet she, if she's being typical, will focus more on his feelings and his support needs. So this might be frustrating for him. Now flip it the other way. If the woman's talking, she's not expecting him to fix the problem. She wants support. She wants friendship. She wants non-fixing the problem. But he is very likely to try to fix it for her. And of course, men and women, their behaviors overlap tremendously, but in general, men are more likely to problem focus, and women are more likely to use tend and befriend. So how can we avoid this issue no matter what the person's sex or gender? Simple. Ask the person, what can I do to help you? What can I do to support you? And ask them. Let's continue to explore our stress-related responses. Another one is emotion-focused coping. This is coping by minimizing emotions, avoiding emotions, minimizing. Another strategy is downward comparisons. This one's fun to talk about. This coping is by comparing yourself to somebody worse off. Isn't there always somebody worse off? Let's say that you took your first exam in a class and it's not all you hoped to be. How could you use downward comparisons? Well, maybe you said, well, at least I didn't fail it. Oh, perhaps you did. Well, at least you didn't get the lowest grade in the class. Oh, well, maybe you did. Well, at least you took it. Well, maybe you didn't, and so on. So there's always somebody worse off. So you temporarily feel better by comparing yourself to that person. Not a very effective strategy, but don't people do it? Indeed they do. So let's review for a moment. Please identify the coping strategy used by the woman on the left and the gentleman on the right. Well, if you're for the woman on the left going for the alcohol-based, I don't remember lecturing about that one, so that would be a bad answer. You've got to choose from the choices offered. Apparently it's emotion-focused. Apparently she's trying to numb her emotions with apparently a white line. The gentleman, it looks like he's focusing on a manual, so he is definitely engaged in problem-focused. Is it the life events that determine our happiness, or is it our perception of them? Definitely our perception. For example, two students might each get a C on the test. One might be overjoyed that they passed. Another one might be inconsolable because they usually get the highest grade, and for them a C is totally unacceptable. Same event, very different perceptions. Or consider in this example, a paraplegic has additional burdens in life, but their level of happiness is not different than ours. Again, it's the perception of the event, not the event itself, that is critical. Many times we can't change our life events, but how we perceive them, well, that is somewhat easier to change. So you're just saying that the perception of the event rather than the event itself is key. So maybe let's put that into motion. I'll give you an example I use on myself. Last semester I was teaching at Center City for the first time, and to be honest, I wasn't thrilled with dealing with the parking, the extra changing of parking places, learning a new facility. And so I kept telling myself, change is good. I am looking forward to change. And I said it with a really, change is good. I am looking forward to change. But as I kept saying to myself, I could feel my attitude changing. In the end, I enjoyed teaching down there, and I enjoyed my students, and I enjoyed the class. So again, it's our perception of events. So please pick something in your life right now that you're not thrilled with. And say the mantra to yourself. I am looking forward to change. Change is good. Actually do it. So, and pause this if you need to. So whatever this is, I'm looking forward to change. Change is good. Do this several times a day. Remember to do it, and you might actually feel your attitude changing. It's a simple way to feel better about life. Now let's consider the two early great figures in stress studies. The pioneer of stress studies, the guy who got the ball rolling, so to speak, would be Walter Cannon. He coined the fight or flight response. Before you go to the next slide, take a moment and see if you can list many of these factors. It should not be difficult since we've already done chapter 3. So we noted changes in BP and blood pressure. We noted increased respiration, perspiration, pupils dilating, more sugar being released into the blood, more adrenaline being released into the blood. Digestion will be slowed. You can't afford to use calories in digestion when you're fighting for your life. So these and many other responses are the fight or flight response. Although Walter Cannon pioneered stress studies, the father of stress studies is another individual, Hans Seal. He coined the GAS, General Adaptation Syndrome. Its stages, as you can see, are alarm, resistance, and exhaustion. We'll see what these actually are on the next slide. So stage 1, alarm, full out fight or flight response. Stage 2 it's being attenuated, it's being weakened. So for example, less hormones. Hopefully the stressor is stopping. If it doesn't, the person goes on, or the animal goes on, to exhaustion. Exhaustion is physically damaging and actually can be lethal. So the 3 stages of the GAS: alarm, resistance, and hopefully not getting that far, exhaustion. Let's continue our discussion of the stress response. Research on the HPA axis, in other words, the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis, has been ongoing, and we're learning more and more about its importance. We now know that exposure to either a very extreme stressor or a chronic stressor or stressors can alter the brain permanently and affect how we react to stressors later in life. So the effects can be permanent. This area is currently generating considerable research in the focus of children, and in children it's referred to ACEs, which are adverse childhood experiences. So again, adverse childhood experiences. So we noted in the previous slide that significant stress alters the HPA axis. Take a moment, I hope you know those 3 letters. Hypothalamic, or if you prefer hypothalamus is okay, pituitary adrenal axis. And here's a picture of ACEs. On the picture on the left is a facility in Texas in which legal and illegal immigrants, and I will stress legal also, were being housed. Imagine the stressful nature of that event to all the individuals, but especially children. And on the right, a child's drawing. So children often draw houses and dogs and all sorts of fun things. This is that child's experience. Again, definitely a visual of ACEs. Let's continue and see how stress affects the body. What family of disorders are caused or made greatly worse by stress? The current term would be psychophysiological disorder. If you look at the major categories, heart, gut, breathing, muscles, skin, stress affects different people differently. Which one of those are the areas that you are affected the most in? On this and the next few slides, we're going to look at some of the basic behaviors of health and perhaps reflect on the way we live our lives and seeing how well we're meeting them or maybe not. Let's consider exercise. Exercise is not only obviously necessary for good physical health, also for mental health. Low levels of exercise are associated with higher levels of depression, anxiety, so really critical. But let's focus maybe on physical health. If you walk a mile every day, it cuts your risk of heart disease dramatically. And you might be young and say, well, I'm fine, but how about taking a walk with your parents, maybe? If you walk a mile and 3/4 every day, it cuts your risk of dying from anything medical. It's amazing. So think for a moment and examine how you are in terms of this area. Good, okay, poor. Next, let's consider the stressors in your life and how you cope with them. Do you actively do things? Meditation or yoga is certainly one way. So is exercise, as we just noted. Stress is inflammatory, and that's a major enemy of every organ system of your body, including your brain. It's also oxidative. In metal, oxidation leads to rust. Well, think of it as the biological equivalent to rust. With that in mind, consider if you're doing anything for stress reduction and how you're doing there, strong, poorly, okay. And then next, please click on those 2 links and listen to them for maybe a minute. Next, let's consider your diet. And remember, if you do need help nutritionally, food pantry 3 times a month. No shame, and it's a great resource. So is your diet high on processed junk food, or is it pretty high in healthy food? Nutritionists often ask us to do an 80-20% ratio, which means yes, you're allowed to eat some of the bad stuff, but at least have 80% of the good stuff. Let's consider proteins. Is your diet protein deficient? Proteins are needed for not only muscle, but for our enzymes, and they're needed in the production of neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters are basic to the brain's functioning, and that affects how you think, act, and feel. So consider proteins, and let's maybe consider a few sources of protein. Take a moment. Sources of protein. Obviously, meat or soy. Cheese is a great source. Yogurt is a great source. Peanut butter is a great source. Nutritional drinks, protein drinks, are also a great source, and that's just some. And for those of you that think coffee is a breakfast, I feel your pain, but coffee is not a breakfast. So consider what you could do perhaps to make your diet just a little bit healthier. Most people have a lot of room for improvement, myself included. Part of nutrition is eating fruits and vegetables. The idea of eating a rainbow, so hopefully every day you'll get at least or most every day something from every color group of the rainbow. You might be thinking the bluish purple. Well, blueberries, I know they're expensive. Buy them frozen, much cheaper. Thaw them, put a little honey on them, maybe some flaxseed or chia seed if you want to be fancy, but a nice source of a blue food. And you all probably have tricks related to the other food groups as well. So eat the rainbow. So let's consider how well hydrated you are. Many people are insufficiently hydrated. It leads to all sorts of problems from UTIs, in other words, bladder infections, to constipation. Your body works better. Your thinking will actually be clearer if you're not dehydrated, which means you'll also learn better. Flavored beverages are not great because it activates the pancreas. Consider using maybe lemon or mint or sliced cucumber in your water. That's fairly cheap, and cucumber lasts more than a week. Caffeinated beverages, not so good for dehydration. So the decaf coffee, much better than the regular coffee, for example, or the regular soda, the decaf soda over the regular soda, but soda's, again, not great. A lot of times when you're foraging the kitchen hungry, your brain is getting confused with thirst with hunger. So a lot of times it's really your body's need for hydration. It'll actually help you lose weight. I found that I get up in the morning, drink a glass of water, go take care of my animals in the barn, come back in, drink another glass of water. I'm already on the right path. So consider your hydration. Consider where you stand in terms of sleep. Most people need 7 hours. If you don't get what your body specifically needs, you're going to learn less effectively. And if you're trying to learn and having difficulty, that could be no small part of the problem. It's also very unhealthy for your body. It causes you to make poor behavioral choices, including nutrition, but it just causes a significant impairment. So consider that. Avoid caffeinated things before bed. Also, alcohol. Also, blue light is also, for example, cell phones and computers is also a sleep impairer. We're finding that mammals, including people, have plastic in their bodies. And you're wondering why maybe there's a picture of credit cards? People consume, apparently, on average, a credit card of plastic every year. How can you cut down your plastics? Well, don't use plastic water bottles, especially the type that are really cheap and they go crinkle, crinkle, crinkle when you push it on them. That is just breaking tons of plastic into your water. But also try to use metal, in particular, water containers, coffee containers. Do not cook in plastic. Be careful about using black plastic cooking utensils. That's usually made from non-food grade plastic, cheap China stuff. So again, use the colored plastic, or even better yet, silicone is much safer. So try to cut down the plastic that you're consuming. Your body and brain will be healthier. And we're just starting to learn about the negative effects here. So in 10 years we'll know so much more, and I'm sure nothing good. So cut down on your plastics. Let's consider another basic habit of health, meeting our social needs. So talking with people shown on the left, texting, cell phone, not nearly as good. People who have high levels of cell phone use score higher in anxiety and higher in depression. So if you can't go through a class without texting, in all seriousness, you should reach out to our counselor. If you have to look at your phone in the middle of the night, again, you should probably reach out to our counselor. It shouldn't be the first thing you do in the morning, the last thing you do before you go to bed in the middle of the night. Again, not healthy, just not healthy. Humans are social and we need human interaction. People that are isolated die earlier. They have lower physical health and mental health. So cultivate what friends you have and maybe try to cultivate new friends. Same with your family. Work on strengthening your relationships if you can, if it's possible and healthy. And the last slide, we're going to see if we can apply some of this. Okay, let's try and apply what we've learned. Pick one of these areas pictured here that you are deficient in and that you could easily make a change that you'd be willing to do. I'm going to pause for 6 or 7 seconds and have you select one of these areas. You can always pause this if you need to. So now that you've picked it, share the particular behavior that you're going to engage in daily. Now, if you're in the classroom, I'm going to have you share it with your neighbor. If you're not, maybe text it to a friend. After you master it, remember to do it daily. This could really make a difference in your life. After you've mastered it, pick another area. So for example, if you're bad on drinking enough water, like I mentioned, maybe get up in the day, drink a glass of water. Before you leave for college, drink a glass of water. Before you go home, drink a glass of water, and you're already probably well on your way to doing well. Or do a daily meditation if you need a stress reduction. Do a little bit of walking. There's so many areas, so pick one and actually do it. It will make a difference. Let's consider type A and type B personality. Type A personality was coined by two cardiologists by the name of Friedman and Rosenman. The discovery came because they listened to an observation made in their lounge. Their furniture was worn and they were using the reupholsterer that all the professionals use in the building, and he made an offhand comment saying their office had a different wear pattern from the rest of the building. In their office, the only thing that was worn was the edge of the seat, not the back of the seats, not the armrest, as if the people in their office sat on the edge of the seat the entire time. But there were many professional medical offices in that building, but that wear pattern was specific to their office. It got the two cardiologists to thinking about the personality style of heart patients, and they devised, after research, type A personality. People with heart issues, especially early onset heart issues in life, are more likely to be type A. They're time-pressured people, highly work-oriented. They live to work. They're often perfectionists. Type B, on the other hand, are people, easygoing, laid back. They work, yes, but they work to live. They don't live to work. You might know where you stand on this dimension, but let's quantify it, and if you don't, all the better. Please go to this link and see if you're a type A or type B personality, or is it possible to be a mixture? We'll have to see. So let's start with people high in extroversion. In other words, the extroverts. They are energized by other people. They get their energy from being around others. They are sociable, more flexible, spontaneous. So if you want to do something at the last moment, an extrovert friend would be more likely to say yes. They're also high energy people. Maybe this describes you well, or perhaps not at all. Let's consider the introverts. You'll notice that shyness is not in this list. Shyness is not an essential feature. What defines them is that whereas the extrovert is energized by other people, the introvert is tired out by other people. They require much more private time. They're cautious in their nature. They let people in, but they're much slower to let others in. And they tend to self-evaluate a lot, asking themselves, why did I do that? Often for years. So go to the website listed and determine if you are more of an introvert or extrovert, or perhaps you're a blend of each. So are you a type A personality, a type B personality, or are you a type A/B? Next, let's consider extroversion and introversion. The person, though, would be an extrovert or an introvert. Think about each of those terms and then see if you can identify major traits associated with each style. So did you say parents, employer, God, your particular religious institution, teachers perhaps, and so on? So whether you have an external or internal locus can have a profound effect in your life. Do you try to take control of situations? Do you think that your behaviors matter? How easily do you give up on things? Very much influenced by your locus of control. Go to this website, if you will, please, and determine your locus of control. Let's say these three students took their first test in whatever class, math, economics, psychology, and unfortunately they all failed it. Determine which locus of control each student has, and then let's consider the implications of their locus. So Jody blames her grades on her teacher, internal or external? Definitely an external locus. I would not be hopeful for Jody passing the course, because if she sees her teacher as being the fault, she's not going to alter her studying and approach to the class and probably will get the same result on the next test. Sal is blaming his grade on his poor attendance and study habits. Sal apparently has an internal locus. I'm hopeful for Sal. If he realizes his attendance and study habits are the cause, maybe he will alter his attendance, missing no more classes, and maybe he'll go to the Learning Center and then give all sorts of private workshops on study skills. Now let's consider Raphael. He blamed his grade on his usual bad luck. Clearly an external locus, and I'm not hopeful for Raphael either. He will not attempt to change his behavior if he thinks everything is being controlled by his luck. So let's consider implications. Students with either internal or external locus are less likely to do homework and more likely to skip class. Would it be internal or external? It would be external, because they do not think their behaviors have much an effect on their chances of success. Your success at college is largely in your own hands. What are some of these behaviors? Well, attending every class humanly possible, promptly, knowing your syllabus, keeping track of the dates that our assignments are due, knowing the nature of the assignments. When you're confused, reaching out to the teacher, to tutoring, and to the many services at the college. Studying regularly and sufficiently, not being the student that waits to the weekend of the test or the night before the test. So with proper behaviors, you will succeed in college, and we want to help you succeed, so we are there for you. So please do all you can do, and also reach out to the people who are there to help you. So here's a little review for you. Don't save your learning to the moment for a test. Learn regularly as you go along. So you should, at this point, be able to do this material. If not, take a few minutes and study so you can. And no, I'm not going to fill in the blanks for you this time.